welcome everyone. All right, yes, so my name is Kostas Pexos, and I'm a consultant with Learning A to Z. So today we'll be talking about implementing digital learning in the classroom. Let me start off by asking a question, a very simple question. What is digital learning? What do we mean by digital learning? Does it mean giving our students or providing our students with tablets and laptops and telling them, okay, here you go now, start learning digitally? What does digital learning mean?
You're learning with your digital devices.
Yes, okay. Anyone else? Have you ever heard of this? What can we do? What is digital learning? What else? Come on, anybody else? Come on, all right, I know it's just the start, but as the session goes on, I would like you to volunteer more answers. All right, now this is one answer that I found on the internet. I mean, if you Google it, you're gonna see there are many, many different ways of defining digital learning, okay? This is just one definition that I liked, okay? It kind of encompasses all the ideas that I think are, relevant. It says, it is learning facilitated by technology that gives students some element of control over time, place, path, and or pace. Okay, in other words, learning is no longer restricted to the school day or the school year. Why not? Because now we have internet, right? We have a host of internet access devices that allow students to learn anytime, okay? Learning is no longer restricted within the walls of a classroom. Again, the internet and the proliferation of internet access devices gives students the ability, okay, to learn anywhere and everywhere. The path, learning is no longer restricted to the pedagogy used by a teacher. Now there are lots of interactive and adaptive software, all right, that allow students to learn in their own style, okay, making learning more personal and engaging. And pace, learning is no longer restricted to the pace of an entire classroom, okay? Once again, interactive and adaptive software allow students to work at their own pace, spending more or less time on activities to achieve same level of learning. Okay. Now, digital learning requires a combination of technology, digital content, and instruction, all right? So technology is the mechanism that delivers the content. It is the tool, right? It's not the instruction. Digital content is the high-quality academic material that the technology delivers, that the students are learning. This is what the students are learning. And instruction, well, digital learning does not mean that we no longer need educators, that we no longer need teachers, okay? Teachers still plays a central role in digital learning. Okay, while I was researching this topic, I wanted to have a look at, when did we start using digital learning in classrooms? And as I was researching, I came across this 5th century Greek vase, and I go, is he using a tablet? All right, and I was kind of curious about this, but no, he's, and I was thinking, the ancient Greeks provided, the Western world with, philosophy and poetry and, mythology, and I'm like, wow, did they also provide us the prototype of the first netbook? But, continuing to research it, I saw that it was just basically the writing tablets of the time. They looked something like this. They were made of wood, and this was wax, and they used something, well, that's called a graphite. It's something like, I guess it was a ballpoint pen of the time. But anyway, we can say that the first technological revolution in the EFL classroom, okay, took place in the 60s, with the introduction of the language lab, and recordings of native speakers. Students were able to go to a language lab and listen to native speakers, right, and practice their speaking. And then, of course, slides, overhead projectors, films, okay, computers were also used to a certain degree in the 70s and 80s, but their role was rather peripheral than central to language learning and teaching. However, today, what do we have? We have computer labs, we have internet access, we have video conferencing. If you walk into a classroom today, you'll see a host of technological devices. Hands up if your students are something like this. Can you read what it says? This book is defective. I tap the pages and nothing happens. Does this happen? I mean, our students today are what we call digital natives. I mean, looking in this classroom, I can see that there are lots of us here that can remember a time when there was no internet. Okay, we can remember a time when we had no mobile phones. But today's kids are growing up with technology. Okay, it's all around them. And what's more is that they keep asking for it. Do your students ever ask you to use some kind of technological, let's say, resources in the classroom when you're teaching them? Do they like when you show them videos, for example? Exactly. I mean, you ask the students to read a book. Well, that's wishful thinking. You ask students to read a text, and they're like, oh, no, But you ask them to read that same text on a tablet, for some reason, they're going to want to read it, okay? So again, it's something that students are growing up with, and they are, asking more and more for it. Can you see this? It says here, you are hopelessly out of your league. Please ask someone under the age of 20 for help. Okay, poor teacher's trying to use an interactive whiteboard over here, okay? But yeah, I know that there are many teachers, okay, that, let's say, try to steer clear of technology. Why do you think some teachers avoid using technology in their classrooms? I'll give you a minute. I want you to talk with the people next to you. Give me some reasons. Why do you think some teachers, okay, steer clear of using technological tools in the classroom? Go ahead, 1 minute, discuss it and give me your answers, okay? Okay, so what have you come up with? Sorry, yes? They're not familiar with using it, okay? Other reasons why you think some teachers.
She says it sometimes causes a very noisy.
Okay. It causes disruption in the classroom, you think?
They use their individual tabs and they.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. I think that's something that teachers can handle with some classroom management skills. They can learn to handle something like that. Another reason. Yes. Tech problems. Computers are crashing. Okay, definitely. Expensive. Yeah, this is a question, that I ask teachers, from different parts of the world. I mean, I travel quite a bit. And one thing that I've come to learn is that, teachers all over the world face more or less, the same kinds of problems. And the answers that I usually get, teachers will say, well, it's too expensive, some will say. There's not enough equipment. The computers are always crashing. Okay. Some will say it's difficult to use. Look, I mean, well, yes, it could be a little bit difficult, perhaps, but it's not rocket science. I mean, I know a lot of teachers are set in their ways. They don't like change, okay? But I think once you get used to it, I mean, it's great. The classroom is too small or it's too awkward. And this was quite surprising that I heard a lot of times teachers say that, that the students know more than I do. Is that a big problem? No, why should it be a problem? I mean, I love it when, I'm also a teacher, and I love it when my students know something that I don't know. I give them an opportunity to shine, to share their knowledge with the classroom. Okay, and this is also something for me to learn. I go, great, I didn't know that. So again, this is something that teachers can also benefit from. It shows your students that, hey, you're human, you're also learning, okay? You're not this, let's say, genius, okay? Now, what? Yes, go ahead, tell me.
Not like computer doesn't
Does not smile, okay. Yes. All right. Okay, now, again, I want you in small groups, okay, to discuss these questions. All right, the first one says, what data are you currently using to drive instruction? What I mean by that is that how do you monitor your students? In other words, how do you identify your students' strengths and weaknesses? How do you know what to focus on? How do you know what gives your students trouble? Like, do you give them a test? Do you just observe from the classroom work? So in other words, what do you rely on to get information about your students' abilities? Okay, that's the first one. What percentage of your instruction is digital or relies on technology? If you do use it, what is the student's reaction when you ask them to look something up on the internet? Do they think that's a drag, that's a bore? Or do they get excited about doing something like that? What works well with your students when you're using technology? What doesn't work so well? What's lacking? Okay? And what happens if you don't do anything about it now? In other words, if you continue in this path, do you think that your students will continue to be motivated to learn, let's say, English if you're not using, 21st century tools? All right, so I'll give you a couple of minutes. Discuss this with the people sitting next to you, behind you, in front of you, all right? And I want some feedback, all right? Go ahead. Okay, let's discuss these together. The first one, what data are you currently using to drive instruction? So how do you assess your students? How do you monitor their progress? How do you identify weaknesses, strengths? What do you rely on? Tests. Okay, just tests?
Vocabulary tests and monthly.
Vocabulary tests, grammar tests. Okay, and then what do you do when the results are, let's say, bad? How do you adjust instruction afterwards?
Then I review the lessons.
And you go over the lessons.
Until the most of the students getting class.
Okay, so you rely on tests, okay. Someone else? Now, what percentage of your instruction is digital, relies on technology? 5%? 10%? 0%? Help me out here. Yes? Okay. Yes.
For my speaking classes, I will show like a movie trailer or something, and then afterwards make the students speak back to me and give a summary of what they think the movie is about, or who are the characters, or show scenes from a movie and have just a discussion about what they saw.
Right. That's a great technique, showing students just like a 2, 3, or 3 minute segment. You don't want to show them the entire movie because it'll result in what we call passive viewing. But if you show them a 2 to 3 minute video, a segment, and you tell them, okay, I want you to pay attention to the intonation, to the body language, okay, they can really focus on what's happening there, okay? Any other technological tools in your classroom? YouTube or anything else? No? What is the student's reaction? Do they like it when you're using videos, movies?
They really like it.
Yeah, they like it?
Yes.
They enjoy learning in this way?
Yeah.
Okay, and then what's lacking? What would you like to see? Would you like to be using more technology in your classrooms or not? You have something to say?
Sure. I think that the hardest part for me is if I want to show my students something, say on YouTube, I try to look up the direct link to it ahead of time because accessing YouTube, searching for the video, scrolling through that is a really distracting process, and I often can't control the content that comes up. So.
Okay. Yes. So it does require some preparation on the part of the teacher. I mean, it's not just as simple as, oh, let's use a YouTube video. You have to screen it yourself, see it, make sure it's appropriate for a school context, right? All right. Now, what happens if you don't do anything about it? Now, I mean, how do you think it's going to affect your students, okay, if you do not use any technology in the class? Do you think they're going to find learning enjoyable in the future? Let's not overestimate the role of technology. We all know that it's the teacher that makes any lesson a fruitful language experience, okay? But when you're using technology, do you think that enhances a student's experience? Yes, you want to say something? Go ahead. I see you nodding there.
Yes, it definitely does.
Okay.
It has. One of the things that we were just talking about was using YouTube videos. And the wonderful thing about YouTube, you can find video about anything and everything. And I found videos about how to explain action verbs, how to explain adjectives, how to explain the weather, and they always have a cute little song. And that short little video, it really catches their attention, but also it helps them grasp the concept of what you're really trying to teach them.
Exactly.
And then it's just like, I like how song.
Very good. Yes. Okay. Now, here are some essentials, okay, when you're going to decide to use, let's say, digital resources, digital learning. These are some things that we should keep in mind, okay? And I'll talk about them individually and give you more information and explain what I mean by data, student engagement, literacy rich, flexibility, and ability to differentiate, accessibility, parent involvement with young learners, and it has to also be dynamic. So the first one is data. If your students are going to be using some digital resources, okay, and I work for Learning A to Z, and we have some excellent resources, all right, the teacher needs to be aware of what the students are doing, all right? The teacher needs feedback. All right? And it's not just the teacher, of course, the student as well. When the student is using a program online, okay, research has shown that once they get immediate feedback, and if they can carry on using the program, this results in better learning and greater motivation. But teachers, all right, what they need to do is they get the information, they see where the students are struggling, and then they can adjust instruction to meet the unique needs of every student. So having access to data is really important if you're going to implement digital learning resources, okay? It also has to engage your students. And we all know that students learn in different ways, okay? Some like to listen, others like to read, others like to write, okay? Let's face it, there's no such thing as a homogeneous classroom, okay? Each classroom, in every classroom, you're gonna have different kinds of students with different learning abilities, okay, and different learning styles. So an ideal program, okay, should engage students in different ways. It should be literacy rich, okay? How many of you have heard of Learning A to Z? Okay, some of you have. We have more than 1,600 books now. I have to update that. It's actually 1,600 books, all right? 29 levels of difficulty. So you can find just the right level for your students, okay? We have tests, running records, so you can identify the correct level. Hundreds of nonfiction and fiction books, and so on, okay? And all of our materials come with support for the teachers, okay? I've even given out some printouts here, some handouts of lesson plans, okay? I'll tell you more about that when we look at the site, but there's lots and lots of support for the teachers. As I said, there are more than 1,500 books, but these books, okay, come with lesson plans. They're not just there, here, have your students read them. They read them, yes, but you can also use them in the classroom. There's a step-by-step process. There's a before reading activity, things that you want to do to activate students' background knowledge, get students interested in the topic. There's during reading and an after reading section, okay? we're going to look at all that. Now, it also has to be research-based. I mean, if you're going to entrust students' literacy in the program, okay, you have to make sure that it works, okay, that, you know, it's gone through rigorous testing. And Learning A to Z, all right, has different kinds of products, and they've all been research-based, okay? They're all rigorously tested. I mean, I don't know if you've heard of What Works Clearinghouse. In the United States, that's the gold standard of educational research, okay? And they basically will say that, will tell you about the efficacy of a program. Now, an ideal digital learning resource should also allow students to, you know, adapt or, let's say, learn at their level, okay? And in learning A to Z, there's great flexibility and ability to differentiate because, you know, none of our students are always exactly the same. None of our classrooms are exactly the same. Students will be reading on different levels. So we want to be able to cater to the different needs for the advanced students, the on-grade level students, and also for the strugglers as well. Accessibility. You know, students should be able to access programs, okay, these resources either on their tablets, their smartphones, and so on. So accessibility is also really important. Having parents get involved in the process as well and in the progress. Again, in our program, okay, parents do have access. They can also monitor their child's progress in learning a language. All right, and together working with the school, with the teacher, okay, they can help out the student get, you know, and reach the success that is required. And it should also be dynamic. In other words, staying abreast of academia, okay, constantly being updated. I mean, technology, okay, keeps changing, all right? The great thing about our sites is because they're online, we can always make all the changes that are happening in the world. You know, if there's a new discovery, we could just simply add it right away. So everything is dynamic, it's ongoing, and so on. All right. Now, how can teachers use digital learning resources in the classroom? In what ways do you think teachers can use digital resources? Can they use them, you know, as a core, let's say, or supplemental material? How can teachers use digital learning resources? Can they use them, for example, to help students that are struggling? Yes? Okay. And of course, they can also use them, okay, for example, as an intervention for students who have fallen behind their grade level peers. Okay, if you see that some of your students are not keeping up, you can assign particular activities, particular exercises, so that they can reach, you know, the other students. So a lot of teachers are using them as an intervention for students who have fallen behind. Some are using them as an enrichment activity for advanced students. You might have some students that are really good, you know, that need to be challenged. You know, sometimes it's difficult for the teacher, you know, to find just the right level of teaching, because in our classrooms, you know, we do have some students that are really good and some that are really weak, and we have the average student, but we want to differentiate. That's the word of, you know, when it comes to education now. There's no such thing as one size fits all. A good teacher has to, you know, pay attention to their students' needs and adjust instruction accordingly. As an accountability tool, allowing close monitoring of student progress. Okay, so you want to see how your students are making progress. Are they learning? As a highly integrated supplemental practice activity, reinforcing skills recently introduced in the classroom. So there you are in class, you know, you're dealing or you're teaching them making inferences. Okay, you're teaching your students the comprehension skill, compare and contrast. You want to see that, can they actually apply what you're teaching them? Can they apply it on their own? So we have digital resources to help students succeed in that. And to support a blended learning model, in conjunction, of course, with teacher-led direct instruction. Now, effective digital learning on students, okay? How do students react? This is based on research. It says, showing that students' engagement was high Okay, students, in other words, enjoyed perhaps interacting with the hardware, with the laptops, in other words, with the tablets. So, again, if you ask students to do an activity in their books, they might frown, they might not want to, okay? But if you ask them again to do that same activity using a tablet, okay, for some reason, they'll be more excited, even though they're doing the same kind of homework. Immediate feedback, hints, access to videos meant that students were not stuck for long and could experience success. This is one of the greatest things about interactive and adaptive software. It encourages what we call autonomous learning. In other words, helping students to rely on themselves and actively search out the tools that they need in order to continue learning. Instead of saying, well, I don't know what to do now, you can provide them with videos, little hints, and that's what's a great thing because they've learned to become more independent. Let's just have a look at this. This is from writing A to Z. This is what happens when students have to write, let's say, do a writing text.
Hi, I was hoping you would visit today. I see that you are ready to start a new piece of writing. Come on into the treehouse and let's get started. So, we're going to work on writing a personal narrative. Great! Grasspadding has love writing a personal narrative. Hey, where is Grasspadding? Wow, that's quite an entrance. Well, now that you're here, read to our friend. Our friend dropped by to write a personal narrative. Topic? Oh, you mean what is our friend going to write about? I don't know. We haven't gotten that far yet. I was going to review what a personal narrative is first. Would you like to help with that? A personal narrative is a type of writing that tells about an experience or something that actually happened to you. Writers use the words I, me, and mine in a personal narrative to show that the story actually happened to them and not to someone else. Great! Now it's time to brainstorm a list of experiences we can write about. Hey, what are you doing? You said brainstorm. I just like getting wet in the rain. You're so silly. Brainstorm isn't a kind of weather. Remember, brainstorm means to come up with ideas. You need to come up with ideas for a personal narrative. Then, one idea is chosen, and that, my friend, is the topic of the writing. Now, what experiences could be topics for a personal narrative I could write? A favorite vacation, a special visitor, a field trip. Yep, these are all experiences that I've had that I could share an interesting story about.
Okay, you get the idea. All right. So this is basically what happens for every writing lesson. This was taken from the Writing A to Z site. There's tab, all right? And step by step, it helps students, come up with ideas. Then there's more help, okay, how to formulate the body and the conclusion and so on, depending on what type of text it is. The point is that we're trying to, again, encourage students to be more autonomous and to take control of their learning. It also instills in students a sense of ownership and control over their learning. And students were motivated by the game-like features, okay? Lots of these online resources will also have these kind of games, okay, that reward students for successful, let's say, activities. In other words, they read and take quizzes, and in this program, they earn some stars, okay? After earning these stars, okay, they can use them on their RAS rocket or their rocket builder. They can build a robot, all right? And this is very motivational for students, knowing that, okay, I'm learning English, okay, I'm practicing, I'm earning stars, and I'm being rewarded as well. Okay, this is something that was also very important, that the research findings showed that students reported positive changes in their feelings towards reading, okay, since they started using it. In other words, students were not that interested in, let's say, reading or learning English. But when the teachers started implementing digital resources in the classroom, their whole attitude towards learning a language changed. Okay, so that's what I was saying earlier when we were doing this discussion phase here. What's going to happen if you stop, let's say, or you don't make any changes, or you don't start, let's say, employing technological tools in the classroom? Do you think it's going to be, easy to keep students motivated because, as I said earlier, kids today are growing up with technology. They're asking for it. It's all around them. And they want to be using it in the classroom as well. Now, what do teachers have to say about digital learning? Well, integrating digital learning into their instruction has increased their capacity to support their students in a number of ways. It provided students with opportunities to practice new skills that they recently learned in class. It helped to easily identify students who were struggling. Okay? Most teachers believe it to have a positive impact on student learning. Okay? It changed students' perceptions of learning. And an overwhelming majority of teachers will continue to use digital learning resources. Okay, now I'm going to try to go on the site, but I just got an email right now saying that the site is down for, I think it's down for some technical maintenance. I'm just hoping, but yes, unfortunately, what I see here, you see? Just one second. Oh, great. Yes, unfortunately, this is just my luck anyway. I was planning the whole presentation to be on the website, I'll admit it, I'll come clean. And I just found out, like an hour before coming here, that the site is going to be down for maintenance. And I was kind of scrambling to put something together, okay? But unfortunately, it is down for some maintenance. Well, and it's a shame because I wanted to basically show you all the things that I've been talking about. But I do have a clear slide presentation. Let me just get right over here. Yeah, I was going to go in and show you the Reading A to Z and the RazKids site. All right. Again, the company is Learning A to Z, and they have different kinds of products. One of the products is Reading A to Z, and the other one is RazKids. There's HeadSprout, there's Writing A to Z, and so on. Okay. Now, through our reading solution, we merge effective assessment, instruction, and practice. In other words, you'll see that the RazKids site, you're welcome to go online and check it out, okay? Has been designed with the student in mind, all right? Whereas the Reading A to Z site has been designed with the teacher in mind. It's a teacher-centric site. In other words, Reading A to Z provides educators with thousands of books and resources to meet the needs of every student, okay? You don't only get one book, one reader. You get more than 1,500 readers at an affordable price you would not believe, okay? Now, the books and materials are available in multiple formats to maximize the effectiveness of instruction and the opportunity to practice. In other words, the books come as ebooks. The students get to read them on their tablets, okay, on their smartphone, because we have an app as well. Now, for the teachers, though, in class, all right, if you want, you can print the books, so they come in printable form, and you can give the students a copy of the book, but they also come in projectable form. In other words, you can just project it onto the board. I mean, you don't need to have a smart board. If you just have a projector, okay, you can still, and a computer, you can still use it, all right? Books, lesson plans, and practice materials for all foundational skills, all right, for phonics, the alphabet, and so on. Assessment tools establish benchmarks and track individual student progress with various assessment. And new and existing resources provide educators with the support they need to implement, well, if you're not following Common Core, but there are still other rigorous standards as well. Now, RazKids, as I was saying, is the student-centric site, okay? Here, students are able to listen, read, and record, and take a quiz for all of the books, Okay, so they can listen to the book, which is great because you see the words are also highlighted, so it allows them to follow and make the sound symbol recognition. Okay, so it increases fluency. All right, they come at 29 levels of difficulty. All right, and now you're probably wondering, wow, 29 levels. How will I put my students in the correct level? Okay, we have a running record. We have like what you call a placement test. All right, you can give it to your students and you get an idea of what their level is, okay? Anytime, anywhere access to the ebooks allows students to increase the amount of time they practice reading. Every online quiz question is tagged to a specific comprehension skill and Common Core standard, okay? Forget about the Common Core standard, you're not following it, but it's still tagged to a comprehension skill. In other words, once they read a book, okay, all the questions are tagged to a skill like, understanding inference, compare and contrast, understanding the author's purpose, okay? And the teacher gets access to all of this information. And then the teacher is able to basically go on the Reading A to Z site and adjust instruction and offer the materials that the students are going to need to basically, adjust instruction and help them succeed. Assessment tools, online assessments help teachers determine the appropriate reading level for each student. And the reports allow teachers and parents to monitor progress and determine the instruction needs of every student. All right. Now, we call it the reading solution, Reading A to Z plus the RAS Kids. Okay. So Reading A to Z supplies the books, the lesson plans that you have. Right now, in this handbook, right over here, I have given you, for example, a lesson plan for a book called Animals, Animals, Animals. Okay. It's very comprehensive. All right. And this book comes in 3 levels. A lot of our books come in multi-levels as well. So you can have the same book in this classroom, and you can have students of different levels using the same book. All right, so that way, let's say you have students that are a little bit more advanced, they can have a slightly higher level book, but actually with the same content. You can have students reading the same book, which is a little bit easier. Now, apart from the lesson plan, we have discussion cards. We have grammar exercises related to each book. Okay, so if you actually, it's a shame I can't go on this site, but if I were to show you the wealth of resources, you would really be overwhelmed by how much you can do with your students. The leveled books, okay, 29 levels of difficulty. And again, we have books that are nonfiction and fiction, different genres, okay, multiple content areas, math, science, social studies, and they also address current events as well. The books come in printable and projectable forms. Okay, as I said, in the classroom, the teacher, you don't need to print the books. You can use a projector and you can project the book. Whereas the students can also, if they have tablets, they can read them on their tablets. All right, and there are a whole bunch of tools, okay, that the students have as well as the teacher, okay, to ask questions, to highlight, to make it more visual for other students. This is all the support materials, leveled book support materials. We have guided reading lesson plans, discussion cards that I gave out, comprehension quizzes, okay. Also, many of the books come in other languages. If you're also learning other languages, they come in French, British, English versions, and so on. Foundational skills, resources for instruction and practice, worksheets, activities for support. Do you teach your students phonics and phonemic awareness? Yeah? You'll see that we have so many materials, okay, helping students identify, the sound of the letter, and we teach them about synthetic phonics, synthesizing the sounds. All right. Now, the teacher they have a file cabinet, and in the file cabinet, what you do here is, because there are so many resources, you want to organize yourself. Instead of always making the same lesson over and over and searching for the resources, what you do is, once you find the resources on the site that you need, you just put them in your file cabinet, and afterwards you have them there for all the other years to come. Okay, so you just need to organize yourself once, and then you can always just go on your file cabinet, find the specific material that you're looking for, and it'll simplify your life. Okay, RazKids mobile app. Okay, so it comes as an app. So students, if they have smartphones, iPhones, iPads, Android, it works on all of them. Now, the ebooks, okay, all the e-quizzes, all the questions are tagged with a specific comprehension skill. So the students, what they do is they listen to the book, they read it, they answer the questions. They need to get at least 80% correct, okay, in order to pass, all right? Otherwise, they need to reread the book, okay, go over the activities again, and so on. So we do give them, this possibility of checking out the answers and going back and revising their answers. And as you can see here, it's highlighted, okay? So when the students are listening to it, they can track the reading, okay? This is supposed to help them improve their fluency. Okay, and of course there's also an online library. It's called the Book Room. This is again on RazKids for the students. They have access to, as I said, 1,500 books. However, I would not give my students access to all of the books because these books start from, let's say, kindergarten and they go up to high school, all right, the level. So I mean, if your students are reading at grade 3, why would you give them access to be reading books at grade 5? It's just going to confuse them and discourage them. So again, the teachers can select, all right, which books the students will have access to, which range. I would give my students access to books that are perhaps just one level above their ability, just to challenge them a little bit, but not give them access to books that are, let's say, if they're in grade 3, why give them books, access to books that are in grade 5 or 6? There's no point in doing that. And the same thing, if they're reading at grade 4, why would you give your students access to kindergarten books or grade 1 books? So again, the teacher can adjust the range that the students have access to. Lots of different kinds of assessment tools, okay, that can track students' progress and determine additional instructional needs, okay? So when the students are doing the activities, everything is recorded. The teachers have access to everything. The parents can have access, but only, of course, to their child's records. They cannot see other children's records, okay? So if you want to give the parents access, they can have access as well. There are e-assessments. These are benchmark books or passages. So in other words, you give your students a passage to read. You assign them a passage, okay? You just send it to them online. Once they open the RazKids, they'll see that they have an assessment. What they need to do is read it, okay? And once they read it, they click on send, and it gets sent to the teacher's file cabinet, okay? So it goes to the teacher's basket. So it goes to the teacher's basket, and then the teacher gets to mark it. But it's also very simple because the teacher will listen, and everything is marked automatically. Like for example, if a student omitted a word, the teacher will click omit, okay? If the student mispronounced the word, the teacher just clicks on mispronounced, okay? And then at the end, the teacher gets a score and sees what the student's fluency is, okay? Fluency doesn't only mean to be able to read quickly, okay? Fluency also means to be able to understand what you're reading. So these running records, what happens is that the students read it. They also have to retell in their own words what this passage was about, okay? And they also have to answer comprehension questions, okay? And once the teacher gathers all this information, the teacher can formulate a better opinion of the student's true abilities. Okay, tax and next generation ELA standards. There are, for example, close reading packs. Okay, these are great. These are different short texts that students can work in small groups. Okay, and they can basically then work together and try to answer a driving question. Lots of visual devices, okay, help students, for example, understand graphs, maps, okay. Project-based learning packs. Again, students here will work together. All the materials are provided, okay. They need to research a topic, okay. And there's, again, a driving question. So the students have to work in small groups, find the answer to this question, and so on. These are the close reading packs, okay? So each student in the group will read a text, all right? Then each student will answer questions on their own about their text. And afterwards, they will work together to compare the answers that they found for their text and kind of summarize and answer the general question. Like here, it was the question was, what do all baby mammals have in common? Or what do all baby mammals need? Okay, so every student is responsible for reading a single text, answering the questions, working together to answer the question. Okay. Integrate and evaluate content presented in diverse media and formats. So these are the visual devices. Again, this is something that students are going to have to do or they're going to encounter in their future lives, okay? So here we have different visual devices that students are trained on how to read them, how to assess the information. And this is basically the teacher's, let's say, notes, okay? These are the teacher's notes, giving the teacher information on how to proceed and how to teach these lessons, okay? Everything is scripted. Everything is prepared for the teachers. You know, we appreciate how much, you know, little time teachers have sometimes and how much, let's say, you know, stressed they might be to finding the right resources. So at Learning A to Z, we've tried to, you know, provide teachers with lots of support. We also have activities like paired books. Okay, here the students analyze how two or more texts address similar themes or topics in order to build knowledge or to compare approaches the authors take. So here we have, let's say, a fiction book, okay, and a nonfiction. Okay, so the students read both books, all right, in order to understand how one approach is different from the other. So with paired books, students will practice close reading skills, answer text-dependent questions, including an overall key question, cite evidence in support of answers as well. The project-based learning packs, there's an anchor text, okay, a driving question, cross-curricular, the lesson plan, primary and secondary resources are included. Okay, so again, the students are working in pairs or in groups. Okay, all this information is provided to them, and the teacher doesn't need to go searching for it. And once they find or answer the driving question, they get to present it to the class. As I mentioned, teachers can review reports that focus on specific comprehension skills at individual and class-wide levels. So you can see how your class is doing and how students are doing in relation to other students in the class. All right, and meet the needs of every student. So in other words, teachers use the data and information reports on RazKids, and then they find the right resources for instruction and practice on Reading A to Z. So that's what I was saying. Reading A to Z is the teacher-centric site, whereas RazKids is the student-centric site. And I'm just going to leave you now just a few more questions here. Okay, now these are just some questions, some food for thought, okay? Points to remember when using new technologies, okay? I mean, does the new technology facilitate the attainment of course goals? I mean, yes, it's true that technology is great, but we also need to think about how does this fit into our curriculum? Are the technology-based activities integrated into the curriculum as a whole? Is the new technology cost-effective? Do the benefits outweigh the cost? Now, are the teachers ready to work with the new technology? Is any training required? So again, if a school is going to implement digital learning resources, we also need to think about the teacher and can the teacher work with this material? Does it serve the needs of the teachers and students? Does it help teachers make more efficient use of class time? Some of you mentioned earlier, sometimes the computers are crashing, things are breaking down. I mean, are the teachers spending more time actually trying to get the material set up, or are they actually teaching more effectively? And I think the last question here that we need to consider, okay, and I think it's very important, is does the new technology promote a learner-centered approach? All right, I mean, is the emphasis on the student? And here, okay, we have the transmission model. Okay, in the transmission model, the students receive or use technology passively. It's not what we're looking for. But in the communicative model, okay, there's active collaboration between the teacher, the learners, and the technology. And this is what we want, okay? It's not just receiving it passively. All right, now I'm going to end this talk by just restating the obvious, okay, that it's the teacher, not the technology, that determines the quality of learning, okay? So again, it's the teacher that will make any language learning experience a fruitful one. Yes, technology does give us some tools, okay, but again, the teacher's part is essential. And the last question, will technology replace teachers? Huh? Well, yeah. Do you agree with this statement? Teachers will not be replaced by technology, but teachers who don't use technology will be replaced by those who do. Do you agree with this? It's more, okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I could not access the site because that's what I was planning on showing you. But I've tried to put some slides together and explain a little bit about what Learning A to Z has to offer you. Thank you very much.